Hi, I'm Jenna. Welcome. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be hearing from two powerhouses in the architecture world, Fougeron and Tom Kundig. Both are renowned for blending art, craft, and science to create singular buildings that are deeply rooted to place. Anne is the founder of Fougeron Architecture, based here in San Francisco. She has a wide body of work, ranging from spectacular homes in remote locales to multi-story large buildings in urban, dense neighborhoods. She specializes in humane, modernist designs with a strong emphasis on light, structure, materiality, and environmental responsibility. Is the volume okay? Great. Tom is a co-owner and design principal at Olsen Kundig, which is based in Seattle and works worldwide. He is known for his innovative and context-driven designs that bridge nature and modernity. His work often features really cool kinetic elements like gears and pulleys, and his work always embodies a blending, a harmonious blending, a masterful blending of industrial and earthy materials. Both Tom and Anne have won countless awards for their contributions to our built world, and both have new books out filled with beautiful imagery and compelling storytelling. The titles are Fougeron Architecture, Framing Light, and Tom Kundig, Complete Houses. These are available for purchase at the fair, at the Stout Bookmobile, which is in the next pier over at the entrance. And a book signing is actually going to follow our conversation today. We're excited to have Anne and Tom here today to talk about their work, their guiding philosophies, and what makes them tick. Before we proceed, I want to take a moment to honor another architect who is meant to be joining us today, Ole Lundberg, who passed away unexpectedly in late October. Like Anne and Tom, he was a remarkable architect whose work embodied the very best in craftsmanship, material expression, and respect for place. He founded Lundberg Design here in San Francisco in 1987, and his architecture can be found throughout the city and beyond, from restaurants and homes to his award-winning public bus shelters. His work is also featured in a new book called Ole Lundberg, An Architecture of Craft, excuse me, which is also available for sale here. A lead principal at Ole's firm, Emily Pearl, is here today, over here. You can just wave hello to Emily. We really appreciate you being here. We're thankful for everything you've done. So we will proceed today with Ole in our hearts and our minds. And with that, I'm going to sit down and we'll start our discussion. All right. Guys ready? Yeah. All right, I want to start with roots and the early days of your practice. Architecture is not like a punch-in, punch-out kind of job. It requires a lot of passion and dedication and sweat and tears. So I want to know, why did you get started? Did you have a guiding philosophy, someone who inspired you, and what were you hoping to achieve in the world? Tom, you want to start with this one?
Am I coming through? Okay. I actually didn't want to be an architect when I was growing up. I specifically resisted it. My dad was an architect. I was around a lot of architects. I really wanted to do something else. I was more interested in sciences, physics, and some of those devices have a lot to do with that kind of background. So my trajectory, if you want to call it that, into architecture was actually pretty soft, that I slowly began to roll in and realize that what was really comfortable for me was, and we all know this tired old phrase, that architecture is that intersection between the rational and the poetic. So I brought in the rational, and there was a part of me that always felt the poetry of what art could bring. And I grew up basically with artists all around me, and I probably had as much influence by the artists as the architects.
Yeah, thank you.
So I actually grew up in a family when I told them I wanted to be an architect, they immediately said, but wait, what about a lawyer? They make good money. Or you could be a doctor. So my family had no idea why I wanted to be an architect. I'm not sure I had either, really. I just sort of had friends who were studying architecture. It seemed very interesting. And I kind of fell into the profession in this very sort of naive, optimistic, and very scattered way, which I think has been the way my profession has been for the last 30 or 40 years. So it stays and remains with me. I came from an art history background, an architectural history background. So for me, it was always about having looked at other buildings and having traveled a lot. I grew up in Europe. And so that was really what I brought to it. I was not coming from the construction end. I don't really know how to build things. I know how to demo things pretty well. That I'm pretty good at, but the building thing is not me. But the thing about architecture that's amazing is that it encompasses so many different venues and so many different skills that you can always find your voice somewhere in there if you're really interested, which is something that I've found fascinating even to this day.
Thank you. What were those early days like in your studio? Is there a story, was it in a garage, or did you rent some weird space somewhere?
That's actually, I've never had that question asked because I didn't have my own studio until I actually moved up to Alaska for a couple of years with a friend. Before that, I worked for other architects because honestly, I saw architecture as paying my way into climbing mountains and mountain skiing. That was my real, it was like feed me kind of strategy. So again, the slow roll was I began to realize how important architecture was for me. And I was probably 30 years old when I really started engaging deeply into architecture.
I had a house in San Francisco, Victorian, and I think I had my office in almost every room of that house in various ways, except for the kitchen. Because I started, there were 2 of us, and then there were 4 of us, and then I was upstairs, and then eventually there were too many of us. There were like 6 or 7 of us, so I took over the unit downstairs, and I really kind of lived in that house for the first 6 or 7 years of my career because it was just so convenient. I had a young daughter, and it just made so much sense. Like I could be in and out of there in 3 seconds. So it was very fortuitous. It's not something that I had planned at all. But the combination of being a single mom and trying to run my business and stuff like that, actually being at home was unbelievably easy, which at the time was pretty unusual. I mean, well, not if you started, but that you would stay that way for a while was. Now, of course, everybody does that, and that's great. It makes it easier. So, yeah.
Pioneer. Yeah. Great, thank you. I wanted to talk about the landscape. Both of you are based on the West Coast, where the natural landscape plays a really dominant role in architecture and just life overall. Architecture in the West is often described as a dialogue with the landscape rather than an imposition upon it. So how specifically does the landscape influence your work? And is there a specific kind of landscape that you like to work within? Do you have like a favorite landscape?
This is the one that could go on forever.
Yeah.
The answer to this one.
Yeah.
We'll stop you if people are starting to fall asleep at the front.
Do you want to go
Okay.
first?
Sure. So I think site planning is kind of the most important job as an architect. I think it's the first thing that you need to think about, and it's what's going to set the whole dialogue from the whole time. And whether you decide to do a building that's rooted in place like Frank Lloyd Wright or like some of Tom's work, or if you decide to do a building that's completely in opposition to landscape like Mies van der Rohe Farnsworth House, you have a very specific point of view. And for me, that point of view is very important. Now, we tend to do work that we feel is very rooted in place. So we've done a couple of houses in Big Sur where, frankly, like the first time you go on the site, I was so intimidated. I mean, it's terrifying to think that you're going to put a building on these places and ruin them. Luckily, one of them already had a building that wasn't so great. But still, it could have been better without building, maybe. So we take this very much to heart and really think about it. And we try to think about doing buildings that, in a way, you couldn't remove them from where they are ever because they would make absolutely no sense. And for us, that's a very powerful way of thinking about working. So I talk a lot about this beautiful poem by Wallace Stevens. It's called Anecdote of a Jar. And it's about how when you place a man-made object in nature, you transform both the man-made object and nature. And this dialogue, and that's sometimes very fertile or sometimes in opposition, however you want to do it, starts. And you can't ignore that because forever that site is transformed and that landscape is transformed, but so is your object. So for us, that's really, I feel like if we can get that right, it really sets us up afterwards for a much more successful project.
Yeah.
I'll back into this a little bit. I think architecture has a problem. And the problem is you always see architecture in the center of the photograph or at the third side of the photograph. It's always about the architecture. It's about the object. We live in such an incredible landscape. I always will say, I'm not going to design anything more beautiful than the landscapes we all live in. So for me, the architecture should be quiet. That's a term I use. It should be quiet to the landscape. It should, to say it disappears, that's an overstatement. But it is something that blends in so quietly that if, and this is the test, if you are in that house or around that place, you don't even know the architecture's there, if that makes sense. Again, overstatement, because it's an object, it still is an object at the end of the day. But it's not about the architecture, it's about the place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you think architectural photographs should really truly be different?
Well, I don't know how you would do that. I mean, we live by photographs,
Yeah.
but I can tell you that Ann and I have been on any number of juries, architecture design juries, and we will see really seductive projects in the photograph. And then you start, because it's our job, is you start understanding the floor plan, the sections and the details and everything that goes into it. All of a sudden you realize this building is not that great, but the photographs or the drawings are fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's,
that happens.
and that's the problem with photo. You know, architecture is around your head. When you walk into something, it's not just what you're looking at there, it's what you're feeling back here. And that's why both Ann and I feel that architecture is not architecture until it's built.
Right. And
Okay.
we worked on a house in Big Sur that's right on the ocean, and you couldn't see the whole house by the time it was built because the landscaping was so wild, and the site that the client owned was quite small. He's since bought more land, so in the end, when we wanted to photograph the house, I felt like you never had the full picture because you couldn't see the whole house. So we hired a helicopter to take the photographs, which was the most incredible thing, not only because it allowed us to see the house, and those will show up at some point when you see through here, you can see the house, it's made out of copper, because we could see the house in its context, but also I could see the whole context of the coast, which I had never been able to read before. I mean, Big Sur, Highway 1, it's a very difficult landscape to understand as a whole piece. So I learned so much from that. So now, of course, we have drones. 10 years later, that's what you do. You get a drone and... But it's just extraordinary to sort of be able to have those tools and to learn from that. And that, in that case, what was more important was the context in the house itself, right? It was really about understanding that landscape.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite landscape that you like to work in? Like forest,
No,
coast?
God, no.
Is there a
I
landscape
think
you haven't designed and that you want to?
Antarctica.
Yeah.
I would be totally fascinated with Antarctica because all the landscapes we have on the West Coast, generally, all the way from Alaska down through Mexico, Costa Rica, into Brazil, where we've done work, every one of them has challenges, and they got this force. And that force, whether it's a climate force or a topography force or whatever it is, that's the magic of making architecture, is trying to understand that place. So there is no favorite. I love deserts. I love mountains. I love tropical rainforests. I'm not too nuts about all the creepy things in there. A little problem with the snake thing. You know, there is no, in fact, let me just make urban settings, that's a landscape also. You know, sometimes we think all we do, both Ann and I, is we work in these beautiful landscapes. Everything is a landscape.
Right. I think of everything as an
point.
infill project, basically. I mean, whether it's a gigantic landscape that's outdoors, or whether it's and we do a lot of urban projects, both single-family home and also large residential projects. I always think of those as the kind of piece of the puzzle that you're putting in that's trying to sort of kind of create that loop and sort of finish up that whole puzzle or that piece of the puzzle, and that's really important. So I always think of those things as infill.
And I think you went to Antarctica recently.
I just did
you?
actually,
Yeah.
and there were no buildings, and it was great. So I don't know if you should build in Antarctica. I'm sorry, Tom.
It would be quiet.
I
You
know,
wouldn't
yeah,
see
all
it.
white. I know, I
Yeah,
get it. You couldn't see it. and it was very cold, so just wait and see. There will be something that will come out of that. It is an extraordinary landscape, mind-blowing. Yeah.
Okay, before I move on to the next
Yeah.
question, just one more quick question. Do you have any kind of crazy story about accessing a site and having to like rock climb to get there, or backpacking, or if you had any kind of extreme kind of scouting?
Well, on Big Sur, we did. It's always this house on Big Sur because it is this site that half of the time is inaccessible because the road washes out, or there's a fire, or there's something that happens, right? And the road washes out here or there. So we did at some point have to stop the car in the middle of Highway 1 and hoof it to get to the site
Yeah.
because the road was gone.
Yeah.
So that was it. So that was interesting. So yeah.
I've never had that question asked, and I thought, oh God, this is going to be impossible because there's so many crazy things we've all been involved in. But I have to say, one that has really left a mark with me. I was invited to basically trek from Pokhara up to Lomontong on the dry side of the Himalayas. Of course, the mountains are really important to me. For me to walk by Dhaulagiri and Annapurna, that was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And what we were supposed to do, and I kind of thank God it wasn't built, was build design 5 little moments along that trek, which is about, I'm going to say 50 miles, but I'm not sure. Take that with a grain of salt. Into these monastery areas that hadn't been seen by really Westerners for years. And God, it was we had to walk, and it was I talk about a slow roll. It took us a while.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So they're like untold stories about architecture.
Yeah.
All right, that kind of segues into my next question about our changing planet. While beautiful and majestic, the western United States, where you both do a lot of work, faces a lot of natural threats. Wildfire, flooding, earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides, drought, extreme heat, and these seem to be intensifying by the day. How do these threats affect your work, and how are you incorporating resiliency into your designs? Tom, you want to
full-time job,
Yeah.
basically, to recognize the threats in these places, because it's not just a threat to the building; it's a threat to the landscape around the perimeter. Anne's right. What we do are infill projects. We're the foreigners. Landscape just kind of takes care of itself. We're the problem children that come into this. So we have to be careful about not only protecting the piece of property, which naturally, and the inhabitants in that property, but also understand the larger forces. Obviously, wildfires, fires, mudslides, earthquakes, tidal waves. Seattle has a distinction of being pretty much the only place in the world that if we get hit by a really big earthquake, the volcanoes go off around the city. The Lahar mudslides wipe out Tacoma and part of Seattle and Everett, and a tidal wave gets set up in the Puget Sound. It goes up against the islands and then comes back and wipes it out. So it's like, if that ever happens, there's not going to be much left. But it's also a numbers game. It's supposed to happen. You just can't worry about it.
So yes, we have to worry about this all the time. I mean, we're very interested in materials in the office anyway, but we finished a house recently that was built over a creek. I mean, it was actually an existing house that we remodeled because we're not really allowed to build over a creek, but we're allowed to remodel it. And the whole discussion for the 3 years that we worked on it was what kind of materials are we going to use on it, how are we going to protect it, how are we going to protect the landscape, how are we going to do it in a way that makes sense, how are we going to maintain it. And so there was a lot of talk. I mean, we had fire marshals come out, fire experts come out, just to sort of figure out is there any way to do this and to make it work. And in the end, the conclusion is you can't completely ensure that it will survive, but you can certainly at least help it happen, or give it another day or two until they can do something. But it's these places are inaccessible, and a lot of these sites you cannot get to, and the fire department will not go to them, right? Because they just can't get to them. So it's whatever you do on site and within the building itself, and the fire sprinklers, exterior and interior, and the landscaping, that are all going to work to try to save this piece of architecture and this house for people, right? So it's hard.
For the people.
Yeah.
And it's just going to get worse because there are less and less sites, frankly. So.
And Ann is making a really good point. We don't fully understand how these fires work.
Yeah.
Needless to say, we're working on 4 or 5 projects in Los Angeles that are firehouses, basically. But we did a house on Carbon Beach that is one of the survivors of the fire. And the first reaction is, oh, it's concrete and steel. That's what you guys do a lot of. Yeah, part of it, but it's also the way the embers get into the house, the way they find their way underneath the house. And we don't know the answer to this. Everybody thinks we had this figured out. We didn't. We don't. None of the glass broke, and the fire sprinklers did not go off. So here you have this raging fire around the house, basically. The art was fine, the furniture was fine, because that's the problem with the firehouse. You're basically everything inside, especially with sprinklers, is basically, or smoke damage. We didn't have that problem, but we don't know why.
So sometimes it just boils down to good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe it's luck. I mean, we have some theories back to the devices. We think maybe one of the devices, which was basically a steel screen, was deployed in the closed position, but it was a screen, so it had, it was like a fence. But the scientists think that maybe the heat, which would normally break the windows, basically was absorbed by the screen before it got to the glass.
Wow.
But no one knows.
Wow. Still so much to learn.
Yeah.
Are there any areas that are really off limits for you to work in, like a flood zone or high-risk flood zone, or do you revel in the challenge of trying to figure out a solution?
Personally, I revel in it. If you look at one of the projects that I have in this new book is, I forgot, it's in the Gulf, in Mississippi. I forgot the name of the little town. The first floor has to be 23 feet off the ground.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because they expect a 17-foot surge to come through and wipe everything out.
Yeah, we have
we had to
roof
design a
down
house.
in beach,
that-
it's like Stinson.
Yeah.
It's not 23 feet, but it's like
There's like 2
It's crazy.
stories.
I mean, it's like this
Yeah.
mobile home on,
Right, up in
on
the-
top of
yeah.
these stilts.
How'd you lift it up off the ground? Steel
Steel,
stilts?
steel.
no, I don't think I can't think of any places that we've been asked to do something where we felt it was not appropriate. Recently, it might have been in my past, but I forget things, so it's okay. Yeah, I think we generally don't try to take projects where we feel we can't contribute something significant to the landscape, so we might not have answered certain things that we felt were inappropriate to where the place was. We don't tend to do very large houses. That's just something that I don't like very much. So, things like that automatically that just don't come up.
It's actually a good question because I can't. It's all a challenge. I mean, we're basically problem solvers,
Right.
and throwing out a set of problems is the most exciting thing that part of our life.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Kind of final question related to this topic of our changing planet. Do you think architecture should be built to last for decades and centuries at this point in time, or should we just be in a mindset that everything's kind of temporary?
Yeah.
I totally think it should be built to last. I mean, there's this expression, I forgot who the architect who said this was, that, the greenest building is the one that was built and is still here, right? I mean, so I firmly believe this. I believe that the more we build things that we then have to demolish 10 years later, 15 later because they're so poorly built is a disaster. The amount of time that it takes for you to design it, the amount of time that it takes for people to get it permitted, all that stuff is the same, right? So all you're changing, and the amount of time to build it. So all you're changing is the end result of how well it was built and how well it was put together and what financed it. And so we all go to Europe. I mean, most people they're like, oh, I don't know anything about architecture, whatever. What's an architect, blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, what do you do when you go to Europe? And they go, oh, well, we go to see the Colosseum, and then we go to the Louvre. And I'm like, well, that's all architecture. I mean, that's what you go and see. I mean, you see paintings, but you also go and see these incredible buildings that are hundreds or 500 or 1,000 years old. So what about that doesn't translate when we come back here, right? And so I really firmly believe that if you can, you should build something for it to last as long as possible and for it to be remodeled many times in its lifetime.
100%.
Yeah.
Because those buildings, to Anne's point, that's a lot of embodied energy to make. So if you want to talk sustainability or care with our limited resources, the best way is to restore or have a building that lasts a long time without much restoration, at some point restoration. Because if you tear it down, throw it away, you've lost all that embodied energy, all those materials. So I'm a little controversial in the jury thing, architecture jury thing, because I think architects in the audience are going to hate this. I don't think a building should be juried until it's at least 10 years old.
Wow.
And the reason is because we build things for 100 years, 200 years, and it's really interesting to see almost these pop architecture that's really grabby, really seductive, and then in 5 years it's DOA, and it's starting to just fall apart. That is paper architecture, I think.
Do you think the same should be true of media coverage of architecture as well?
I think that's actually a really good point. I never thought of that, but I think it's true. Now, it is our marketing arm, and it is, that would be tough.
Yeah,
But or maybe what's more important is go back to those houses in 10 years. The best architecture award you can get at AIA is the 25-year award.
That's right.
Because they go back to basically a masterpiece, and they see how it survived for 25 years.
We were talking with Tom about how nice it is to go back to see buildings that you've done. And it's not always the case. Single-family homes could be the most complicated because people start to occupy them and they don't really necessarily want you there and stuff like that. We have a couple of projects where the clients let us come back and stay whenever we ask. Well, when we ask and it's available, but it's extraordinary. And one of them's been done for 10 years. So it is sort of like going back in history and sort of rethinking some of the things that you've done. So, of course, Tom and I totally agreed about the fact that light switches are in the wrong place, for example, and stuff like that. And who designed this stupid house? You can't even find the goddamn light switch. But anyway, but the idea of being able to go back and sort of see how people are occupying the space and how the landscaping is changing and how the house is sort of kind of integrating itself even more into the landscape. I mean, that's a pretty incredible thing, and you learn a lot from that. Actually, I do, at least. Yeah.
Totally agree. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do like occasionally having things on buildings that move, because I don't want it to be static. I want it to kind of move with whoever the inhabitant of that place is, and change it. It's actually kind of exciting.
Yeah. Actually, this might be a good time to ask you about clients. I had a question about clients. Can you, because you're mentioning going to stay with your clients 10 years later, so that must have been a really good relationship. Can you describe the ideal architect-client relationship, and where do you draw the line between adhering to their wishes and your own creative vision? And then have you ever had to walk away from a client due to a clash?
All right, so the best client is the one that lets me stay in their fantastic house in Bixter 10 years after it's finished. It's like everything else, right? I mean, somebody has to come to us because they want the type of architecture that we do, right? Which is not the same as the type of architecture that you do or than the other architects in this room, right? And we all have a kind of personality, a style, a way of working that are there and that you have to get along with, not only because you like what we draw, but also you like us, right? And you like the flavor of the office and how people work together and stuff like that. So that's all very personal. And that is the only thing that really works in the end, particularly in single-family homes because it's such a personal relationship. So the best clients are the ones that feel like they're getting what they wanted, and then they're getting more than they could have imagined. And that's always the best thing. We get these emails from some of our clients. I mean, I have one client in Palo Alto who, every 2 years he sends me a little message that says, I can't believe how beautiful my house is, and I'm coming down the staircase, and it's Christmas, and I just want to thank you again. And I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I keep the email. I feel good for a day until something terrible happens. But I mean, whatever. So I think this is the thing for me that matters, and it really matters that relationship works. And it doesn't have to be that we go to stay at their house all the time, because that doesn't always work, but we have to feel this kind of mutual respect and this understanding, and also that they let us do what we're really good at, which is not necessarily what they're good at, right? So, right. So, and yes, we have fired ourselves from jobs.
Oh.
A couple of stories. One is one of my best clients. I will say clients are basically people you have a conversation with. I mean, you're bringing your part. It's like jazz, right? You're bringing your instrument, they're bringing their instrument, and at the end of the performance or whatever, there's something no one really would have guessed where you ended up. So it's a conversation. And I had a client, and a couple of people in the audience know who this client is, and that client was really tough on me, and asking just probing questions. And finally he said, well, how can I, and I won't use the word he used, but how can we screw this project up? And I'd never had a client ask me that question. I said, well, and now I still believe it. I thought, if you don't trust me, don't hire me. Yeah. Because we're going to have this relationship for so many years, and if there's something that's not working, let me find you that architect that might work. Does that kind of make sense? It's based on trust. It's why you go into neurosurgery and you're trusting the neurosurgeon. It's the same with architects. You're trusting this person to make something fantastic for you. Second story is one of my favorite clients, same thing, interviewed me really tough. And then Paul finally said, I actually don't like anything you've done to date. Except I want to hire the brain that came up with those things.
Oh.
And it was...
Wow.
Whoa. What do you do with that?
Well, it was fantastic because, and he was a great client because conversations, great house, it feels comfortable.
Okay.
Those are two very good clients.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to talk about craft because it's such an integral part of your work. And the relationship between craft and architecture is so foundational. In an era of digital tools and prefab and digital everything, fast delivery, what role does craft play in your practice now, in your design work? And how do you protect craft in this modern era?
I've been around for a few years. I don't use a computer. I use a pencil. And I think the pencil is craft, right? The way you hold the pencil, the way you use a pencil, the way you describe things in pencil. I still, to this day, think the digital equipment has not met the same level of potential that a simple pencil has. That's not saying it won't. It's just crude equipment at this point, even with high performance like AI, which is actually pretty interesting. The craft of a building, yeah, absolutely. There are we can make Japanese joinery on a computer and it fits together perfectly, but it doesn't have that, I don't think it has that soul. Now, can we afford it, schedule or financially? Absolutely. It's a huge question. Probably not. But if you hire a craftsperson, you have to remember you're hiring a person that's feeding a family and taking care of a family. And that's what I think is the human part of digital fabrication that we sometimes forget.
So, I mean, the thing that's interesting about architecture is that it's a place that you live in, when you work in, whatever you do. And so this tactile environment influences us in so many ways, right, that we don't even understand because we're busy doing other things, right? I got to the doctor, I got to do that, I got to pick up. But somehow, some way, every single day, the things that you touch, the things that you look at really matter. And so I think this is where craft is essential. I mean, I think subconsciously you see that. That's why I think people like going to these old buildings, because the sense of craft is maybe more apparent quickly. And it's very important for me as an office that we understand how things are put together and what materials make what sense where. So we will often start a project thinking about wanting to use a material like almost at conceptual design, because it makes so much sense to us in this idea that we have for this building that this material would be an integral part of it. And so we're kind of already at that level, even though we don't even know where the bedroom goes yet, right? So that's where I think, and that comes with, I think, years of working. Doesn't happen right when you just start working, but it's an integral part of our process. So I can't imagine architecture not being made of stuff, because it is, and so I can't imagine that you wouldn't care about this stuff, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, at least. Now, for some other people, yes, maybe, but for me, it's just, it's got to work together.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about materials and materiality, and this seems like a good moment to do it. Both of your practices are known for their expressive use of materials. How do you decide when a material should sort of speak quietly versus when it should be the primary narrative in a design? And also, do you have favorite materials that you like to work with?
I'm not sure I'm answering your question here. One of our main jobs is proportions. Mm-hmm. And how do you proportion a place in an appropriate sort of assembly of vignettes sometimes and overall experiences? So it's hard to say any material is a favorite. I mean, I like natural materials, obviously. I like wood, I like steel. I mean, these are easy to say that because I do like wood, steel, concrete, brick, stone. But it's how you use those in the proportions between each other and what they mean as the building is experienced. Is that kind of answering your question?
Because it's like context dependent somewhat?
It can be, yeah. It can be because I mean, if you, as an example, if you use weathered steel I think just naturally fits into the colors of the desert or the colors of a ponderosa pine forest. Maybe doesn't work that well in an urban sense. I don't know. I'm guessing here. It could, but I just don't know.
Are there any materials you don't like working with?
Not really. I mean, even plastics
Yeah,
are sometimes.
are okay.
Yeah, some plastic. You know.
Yeah.
Just depends on the design.
It really depends on the design, I think.
Context.
I mean, so we get challenged to have to use new materials just because of things that we've talked about before, like fire and this and that. So we're constantly having to sort of kind of grow our library of things that we'll use. And we also challenge ourselves because we become interested in other ideas. And so we don't like to do the same thing twice in my office for some ridiculous, I don't know why, it was stupid. We should redo the same thing over and over again. We'd be so much better off, but whatever. We don't do that very well. So we're constantly thinking, okay, well, we use this, and this taught us that, and so what do we think, what's the next level of being able to use that? But we did this house that was cantilevered over a creek, right? And we had to take out all the supports that were in the creek, which is how the contractor had built it previously, because that was clearly very dangerous because some gigantic boulder was going to come down the creek and the waterfall and take out the structure of the house, and then that was going to be that. So we have to build it like a bridge, and when you build a bridge, what really matters is how heavy the bridge is, and blah, 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 and all that and all that. And then so, 6 months later, the clients are like, we want all the floors to be stone. And we're like, well, that's nice, but stone, we're going to have to look at that because stone is thick and it's heavy. Right? And so then ensues this gigantic research in how you can use a piece of stone that's basically 1/8 of an inch thick, and you can use it inside and outside, because that had to be the same material, and you can lay it on this house, and then you can weigh the house, because we kept weighing the house, which was really fun. Well, we didn't. The engineer did, actually, to make sure that the weight was okay. So I had to go to Italy to find this stone product. I mean, you just do, and this was something that the client wanted. I mean, I was perfectly happy to use another material on the floor. I was fine with it. I would have said, let's do a little epoxy resin. We're all done, thank you very much. But no, that was not going to happen. So, you have to find ways to make things work. I mean, if you couldn't have made the stone work, we would have found something else, clearly. But so there is a way in which you are learning something new all the time about how things are being made, and you wouldn't know unless you had to do that, right? And so I love that part of it. I love the fact that it forces us to kind of think outside the box
Yeah.
and to kind of keep, using our brain, which, is helpful when you're getting older.
We have about 9 minutes before our Q&A with audience members.
Sure.
So I had 2 questions I want to squeeze in. You might not love this question, but I want to ask about artificial intelligence, because we are sitting in San Francisco, the epicenter of the AI boom. And in my personal world, it's like what everybody's talking about all the time. And I was curious how it's affecting your practice and if it's something you're engaging with.
Well, obviously it's affecting all practices really deeply. A lot of our clients are technology people, and so I like having those conversations with them, and they like to remind me that AI, it's not really that special. It's just super computing potential.
Right.
So that's where it can borrow everything. So it's not like a reinvention. So they always want to say, everybody is sort of enthralled by this. Oh yeah, it's got some really interesting things that it can do. And it does some interesting things. We have an AI group, of course, in the office, and they, months ago, they kind of put into their system, Tom Kundig, Desert House, so many square feet, some description of materials. It came back, and my first reaction is, well, that's pretty good. It was actually pretty good stuff. But then when you dug into it, you could recognize that it wasn't a total solution. It was more like what we would call an image. And that was about it. It still is an architecture. It's an image. But it is useful. It is a design, as a tool to experiment, as a tool to set up modules or sort of think about things and twist things. God, it's fantastic, I think. I like it. It's scary.
Yeah.
Which app or model do you use? ChatGPT, Claude?
You're asking the wrong. I'm the
Okay.
pencil guy. They're wired for bear. That's all I know, and they're all excited, and the work is just. It's just amazing what you can do to sort of study something.
Cool.
It's a real value, I think.
So you're not freaked out?
Well, yeah, it can be abused, and it will be abused, just like it is being abused. I have a client that is very important in the music business, and he came down one day and he said, "Hey, Tom, listen to this." And he opened his laptop, and it was a song about his wife, and it was a pop song. And all of a sudden I realized, oh no, wait a minute. And I said, oh, that's about, I won't use her name. And he said, yeah, I did it last night in 30 minutes.
Wow.
And I said, what does that mean for the music business?
Right.
He goes, we're screwed. Because at kind of a B squad, 80% level, developers are going to use AI, music developers, building developers. There's going to be it's so efficient and useful at a certain level. But is it the last 20%, 10%, 5%? I don't think so.
Yeah, not clear it can do that. My daughter's a writer, so I'm not allowed to talk about, think about, do anything with AI. Otherwise, she will
fair
literally disown me. And she would, because we have discussions about this all the time. So we don't have an office that uses it, I have to say. And I may never use it because I may never get to that point where it's that useful yet, and if I'm still working. So I don't have much to say about it. We used a lot of virtual reality stuff, and we used a lot of walking through projects and wearing those goggles and stuff like that, which actually a client introduced to us and we loved in the office. So we had this whole system down where we could have people just walk through their whole building, house, not house, housing project, because they could put on the goggles and just basically we'd render it all up and stuff, which was an amazing tool that we both use for extremely sophisticated developers that think they know everything. who are like babies, like candy. You're like, oh my God, look at this, to clients. So that's been very useful. So I've got to believe that there's something in AI somewhere along the line that will do something, but I'm not there.
Not there yet.
And as I said, like,
Yeah, fair point.
It's a tool.
It's a
and you
tool, I
just
think,
have to
yeah.
see it as a tool.
Right.
And a tool can be misused.
right.
Yeah. Well, this is the final question before we transition to the Q&A. Given everything you've shared with us today, I was wondering if you could share where you draw your inspiration from. Are there like places that you travel to, or do you have daily practices like meditation or running or sketching or yoga that really recharge you or ground you? Or nothing, just a cup of coffee.
No, it's like the opposite of nothing. It's everything. We live in such an amazing situation. We got to pinch ourselves that we're even alive. Friends of mine are math kind of geniuses, and they say if you look at the fact that we're even alive as just chance, the number is amazing. So, I think architects in particular, you got to grasp this thing that we have, this life that we have, and just make the best thing possible out of this situation. So it's not one thing; it's everything.
Nice.
So the only other profession I really would have wanted to do besides being an architect is being an astrophysicist.
Whoa.
I don't think I could have made it because it's way too much math, but this is my source of inspiration these days because it's true, the world is so complex, and the fact that we're even here, the fact that this earth even exists, the fact that there are even people on this earth, the fact that this earth has been through, 7 extinctions, or is it 6, whatever. I mean, all of it is so mind-boggling that's what, when I can't stand it anymore, and I hear another story about you-know-who, the guy with the orange hair or the orange face or whatever he is, I go to that. I go to that place where I realize that the level of sort of complexity of the world, the things about it that we don't understand and don't know, and yet are so fundamental, right? Like, is the world forever expanding? Is it infinite or is it finite? I mean, these are like amazing questions, right, that you can think about, and that's where I go for inspiration. So I also travel. I just went to Antarctica. Of course, I go to France all the time and go to Europe to see buildings and stuff. But I think on a day-to-day basis, that's what I do. I've become a little sort of astrophysics Luddite nut, basically.
It's like a practice of gratitude,
Yeah.
daily gratitude.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Amazing
cool.
place.
Well, cool. Thank you so much. We're going to switch to audience questions. We have someone roaming around with a mic. If you want to just raise your hand, she'll come
Sorry,
over.
it's loud in here. I hope you can hear us, because
Okay.
yeah.
Whoa.
Wow.
Thank you
So
both.
loud.
You talked about where you might want to design a project. Have you ever designed a project for yourself? And if you did, would it be a tree house or a rolling house or a beach house, a lake house? Would it be big, small? Do you have have you done it, or do you have a dream of what you'd want to do?
I worked for an architect years ago, and he would always say, if you're not an architect until you design and build your own place, whatever that place might be. It might be a treehouse or whatever, because that's when you're really laying it out for everybody to see. I totally agree. So we've been lucky. My wife and I have been lucky to actually do some projects, mostly remodels, but significant, heavily based remodels. The house we live in is called Hot Rod House. It has a lot to do with just the experiments that, we were thinking about how windows work, how, metal is worked in a certain way. Does that make sense to you? I think you should be doing something that's creative, that is coming from you alone, not necessarily influenced by an outside client.
I have designed a few of my own things, but they're all too small. I can't afford my own architecture, which is really pitiful, frankly. And I slap myself on the hand all the time for it, but I just haven't been able to do that. So I've tinkered with things left and right, but I've never been able to do my own house. Or even, yeah, sorry.
There's an implication in this. I don't think we explained this clearly enough. Ann and I are architects from soup to nuts. We actually and if anybody has a technical question about how these buildings are put together, we can answer those for you. Because we actually are technically rooted to make a building, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the more you do for yourself, the more you're going to discover how things really work and how difficult they are to actually make.
Right, and a good thing about doing stuff for yourself is you learned how impossible clients are, and that's you. You know what I mean? And you're like, it's just too expensive. And you're like, but no, wait, I can't compromise. It's so important that I have that window exactly there. So it's kind of good in a way. So even if I haven't done whole projects, I've done, things, enough things.
Oh, sorry. What would you say is the common thread in your work, or is there a singular fascination that you find yourself coming back to?
I don't know, Anne may answer this in the same way. Context is the most interesting thing, because when you understand your context, which includes everything, the client, the landscape, just everything, the sky, the ground, what's happening underneath the ground, the earthquakes, the fires, that's context to us. And our job is to take that context, including the client program, because that's context, and then make something out of it. That's the most exciting thing for me in our profession.
So there are two answers to this question. One of them is it's the work itself, and so it's context, it's light. I mean, we have our building out there, and it's called Framing Light, and that's because I think we spent a lot of time thinking about natural light. As I always say, the sun is free, so natural light is free. And so all you need to do is put a window. You have to pay a little something for the window, but then that's it, right? You don't have to pay for the rest, which is pretty great when you think about it. So I'm always encouraging people to think about how to get all that free stuff and make their interiors better. The other thing that really runs through my work is the fact that I'm a woman, sole practitioner, owner of her own firm. And I've done that my whole entire life. Well, not entirely, I'm exaggerating. Only 35 years or whatever it was. Anyway, and that has marked my time. It has marked what I think about. It has marked the work I do. More so now even because we find ourselves going back instead of going forward, which really upsets the hell out of me. And so that's the other thing. So my book is also full of essays written by women, architects or academics, whom I wanted them to write articles about what they are thinking about, because I think it's so important for us to express ourselves together. So that would be another answer.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anne, you touched on something I'm sure that's interesting to the women in the room. Why don't you think we see more women in your position in this field?
Oh, God. Can somebody answer that for me? We don't see more women in the sphere.
That is changing.
Yeah.
That is changing radically. If occasionally we'll teach in studios or schools, by far there are more women learning to be architects than men.
So I think
that is changing.
That is changing, but the fact of the matter is that the women who own their own firms on their own still represent about 5% of the firms in America. So that's not changing fast enough. And I think it's because architecture is not an easy job. It's not an easy job if you want to have a family. It's not an easy job if you want to make a living and have a family and all those things. People have to make difficult decisions, and those difficult decisions are often that they have to go on and do something else, or they can't work on their own. So I realized that I was able to make it work. I don't know why and how. I think partially because I had an office in my house for a long time. I mean, I'm not kidding. That was like a complete fluke, but it sort of worked for me, having a young child. So I think we have to recognize that too, and we have to keep pushing to help women who do want to start their own businesses on their own, and to help them and to figure out how to make it happen. Because this is how we're going to get, a better architecture, frankly, and a more just world, which wouldn't hurt.
Can you talk about how you handle prototyping and mock-ups? Do you have in-studio fabrication yourself, or do you have trusted fabricators that you have a long experience with who help develop that stuff?
All of the above. We have a shop, we have 3D printers, we work with outside fabricators, we have an accessory line, hardware. Largely the reason for that accessory line is we had access to a shop and really skilled craftspeople that we can mock up or prototype. I think that's one of the most important things you can do in a project. And it can even be something as simple as foam core cut and glued to sort of understand a shape or a form or a scale.
In our office, we're big believers in making models and as sloppy as possible, which is something I sort of learned from going to Frank Gehry's office, which you cannot believe it's like a cemetery of like models ever. But anyway, and then because then I go in there with usually the other principal in my firm, and we just rip it apart. And however long you took to build the model, I'm really sorry if you're in this room, we will rip it apart in 5 minutes. But because I think what you learn from that is just what the thing really looks like and what you can do to it. And so I think making things, 3D printing things, we do that too. I mean, anything that you can do to turn it into something that you can see in 3 dimensions that actually exists is really fascinating.
But to Anne's point, it's not precious.
Yeah.
The models are not precious. They're there to study and cut and modify.
I was wondering if you both could talk a bit about the design culture within your broader offices. You start with a pencil. When do you go from pencil to a computer? How many iterations are you doing? How many variations does the client see?
Okay, so we're terrible because we only do about 3 schemes. I don't have more in me, and Todd doesn't either. So we're like, we have 3 schemes, and I look at him and I go, "There's got to be another idea here." And he goes, "Yeah, let's think about it tomorrow, and then that's it. We're done." So we do 3 schemes. Sometimes we have to do more if the client really isn't happy. Usually we try to make them happy, and we work very conceptually at first, very quickly. And then we quickly go to like doing SketchUp models. We're big fans of SketchUp models, anything that's 3D, and then real models too, even if it's a big building, just because we want to understand what it really looks like and not get too crazy on the computer where people start to over-design them. It's like, oh, wait, no, it's Revit. You can't change a window. If you change a window, you got to change the whole family of windows. And I'm like, I don't care about the family of windows. So we try to stay in that realm of like quick and dirty. And everybody gets their hands dirty. I mean, that's the sort of idea, right? Is that where I always say like the best idea leaves the room. And that's it. Because there's always somebody that's going to have a better idea, which is sort of great. So that's the culture, I think. I am kind of the leader, but that's just because I've been working longer.
I kind of made a Faustine agreement a number of years ago because I'm actually a small project person because I like putting my whole head into the project. And the book is houses, but that's only 50% of my work. There's another 50% coming out with another book that's going to be called Complete Works, and that's the non-residential stuff. But the houses are important for me because you can prototype, you can research and develop, and you can do them quickly. The Faustine agreement is that our office has grown considerably from where we started. I basically started, we were 7 people, and we're so much bigger now, and it becomes, not quite as satisfying to be into the project like it used to be. So, trying to figure that one out.
How many employees do you have?
It's huge. But I think if you want to stay involved in design, which I'm agreeing with you here, is that you have to make a concerted effort to do that. And so I've tried different methods, like I will only design on Sundays and I will not answer email. Well, that lasts about a week or 2, and then some blow-up email comes through, and then everybody's like, but I think you have to force yourself to sort of decide when those moments are important, which also means that you have to give up on other things, which is okay.
Really,
Yeah.
and that's really important to follow up on. I have, he's not a shareholder anymore, but Olson is 85 years old. He still puts in 60 to 70 hours a week.
Oh my God.
We all do. And that's the way you can stay in the design, because there's so much noise that you're dealing with.
Right.
You have to be in a quiet place to begin designing.
I think
Somebody in the back, I think. Yeah.
I think we need to wrap it up. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time. Thank you. Thank you.